Hello, and welcome back to Asian Pulse. I'm your host, Shivani Naiker, and we have an exciting show planned for you today. Dr. Bonnie Henry has announced that as of August 25th, wearing masks indoors are mandatory. Masks are mandatory on buses, SkyTrains, sea buses, and also on ferries. Masks are also mandatory inside gyms, indoor pools, sport complexes, and as well as restaurants. As well, on September 13th, your proof of vaccination will be required. All schools are in full season with the police out on full force to stop people from speeding in school zones. The speed limit is 30 kilometers, so please keep in mind when you are driving through your school zone. I'll be right back. Coming up, Camilla will be talking to Annie Ohana, an activist and also a teacher at LA Matheson. We will be talking about the upcoming election. Please have a look.
Hello. But before I introduce today's guest, I want to acknowledge the unceded territory we are on of First Nations, Squamish Nations, Silvertooth, and Haisla. Is it not Haisla, but
probably Kwantlen?
Kwantlen. Mm-hmm. So we are here and we appreciate you allowing us as immigrant for sharing this land with us. And my guest today is Annie Ohana, and today we will talk something very different, as we all must have had. Is shocking to everybody that we just found out on Sunday there was an election being called. We knew it was coming the way the government was rolling out the dough, giving out everywhere they used to go, and I knew there's something up the sleeve. Yep. So how shocked are you? Is there a call for election during the pandemic? That's the first question.
Yeah, I remember a press conference where Trudeau said, we won't have a pandemic election, right? And I'm paraphrasing his words, but that was what he was saying basically. I'm shocked, even though it was the worst kept secret.
Yes.
The whole month of traversing on taxpayer money to hand out money, which I can tell you from personal experience, a lot of these organizations have fought for years for funding and are refused and, writing letters to ministers, and then all of a sudden they drop, some money for you.
Yeah.
So I actually have an issue even with that, the process of how that funding works for what is often very important projects and things for Canadians. And to be honest, beyond the pandemic, because God forbid this pandemic continues, our governance needs to function, right? Mm-hmm. So, putting that aside, what about the fact that Afghanistan has fallen?
Yes.
We have millions of people in the hands of a tyrannical regime where human rights it's already gone, but will continue to completely disappear. And we were there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we just turned right around and got out. Mm-hmm. Haiti just happened. There's any number of cases going on right now in our world that
and
are
BC
hugely
is burning down. The fire in
Absolutely.
BC, British Columbia. There should be more focus in here to control the fire than to call this election.
Absolutely.
It's uncalled for. All that money that's going to go into the election could have been used otherwise. And
we're only 2 years in.
Yeah.
And I know there were scandals. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold our government accountable, but the Liberals held the strings here. Mm-hmm. And the government decided, I call it political math. They did their own mathematical equation that would benefit them. Mm-hmm. So it was very unethical in a number of ways. And I feel for friends and family and BCers, across Canada. Mm-hmm. So you're being evacuated multiple times. Your home might burn down. Lytton burned to the ground. You're supposed to think about an election right now? It makes no sense to me. And I wish there had been a moment of a moral thought of maybe we delay this.
Yes.
Maybe earlier in the summer this made sense, but maybe now we delay it. And I wish that was what would have been announced on Sunday. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's okay to give people more time. And if I can be very direct as a former candidate, when you have a government that uses taxpayer money to flood the airwaves and just kind of dominate, for a working class person to run for office from any party, let's make that clear. How can you do that in 35 days?
Yeah.
How can you effectively provide alternative ideas, different voice, and very much represent people that might differ in opinion when you have no time to really build that foundation to provide that effective counterpoint? We're in a democracy. we're not in a totalitarian regime. We're not all supposed to vote Liberal. But in order to get our voice out, we need time and we need access. And 35, 36 days is not enough to do that. And it's, especially when it's kind of near the end of summer, but like when so many things are going on, people are more concerned about their livelihoods, about their health right now. We are in crisis mode.
Yep.
And it's unfair for people who are in crisis to all of a sudden somehow give money, spend time dealing with things that really are not at their front of mind. This election did not have to happen right now.
Right. Well, there was an election about 22 months ago on October 2019 when people voted for the minority government.
Yes.
They did not want to give power to the one government so they can run with everything like Trudeau did before that.
Yeah.
So there was a minority, and this minority government worked just fine during this 18 months of pandemic, and the other parties supported them because everybody who didn't have no jobs and people who were not able to pay rents and all that, so everybody supported. And he's been asked by 4 different media that, are you looking for a majority government?
Yes.
And he refuses to answer that. So what is the point if you're going to be running a minority? Why call this election and spend the taxpayers' dollars?
Exactly. And some people are saying it's a power grab, right? So while their numbers are a certain direction, like maybe we can get a majority. And to be honest, that is very hypocritical. Because you're right, there was collaboration, right? That coalition was doing good things. We saw the NDP come forward with different ideas, right?
Sick days
push
and all
things
that
forward.
never had
Sick
of
days,
this.
curb, starting discussions on universal basic income, multiple different variations, right? But so why won't a coalition matter now? Why can't we continue that collaboration?
Yeah.
Because they all celebrated the fact that they collaborated, even provincially here in BC. And yet it becomes almost this tool of, you voted for me. Like it becomes this weird argument about why did we collaborate? And I find that hugely problematic. If a coalition, if it worked during a pandemic, I am sure it can continue to work until we find ourselves in a little bit more of a stabilized environment so that we can have fair and open elections. But I really don't feel like that's the time that this is happening. So it is very much about a majority government. I don't see any benefit to
what
Canadian
I
people.
see, he stole a page from John Hogan's campaign when we did that.
Yeah.
Because I think it was just one party. There was no opposition.
Yeah.
We had Greens.
Yeah.
There were hardly any Greens.
Yeah.
And Liberals were gone. So the only party in power that time was the NDP.
Yeah.
And maybe they have done good things and they thought it's good time to call election.
Yeah.
And he walked away with majority.
Yeah.
Well and good. Do you think that same thing might happen? I don't think he's leading in the polls by that many or that far that he can do that unless because there is other parties there too.
Let's, strategic thinking that way, which you're right, all parties have done, right? It's not just a Liberal invention, is very short-sighted, in my opinion. Because what about the fact that you might think it's beneficial for you, and to have these early elections might trip up the other parties.
Yeah.
But we're noticing growing apathy. The last federal election in 2019 here in Surrey, we had some of the lowest voter turnouts. It was barely over 60%. That's hugely problematic. That was an important election. And still people didn't come out to vote. The more games we see, the more strategy we see in terms of, let's poll and let's this and let's that and let's call an election before the other guys are ready. That's not really democratic. And that certainly does not inspire folks to believe that their democracy is strong. And that's hugely problematic in the long run. Because then you're going to have governments that kind of do whatever they want and hurt Canadian people more and more. Again, that dialogue with people needs to happen. And I did work for the NDP here provincially, but I know a lot of us were angry about that. Middle of the pandemic. No time to really think about what that might look like. And to be honest, I think they would have gotten a majority because they had been doing, most BCers tended to approve of the policies. So why?
Yeah.
Why put people at risk that way?
Yeah.
So I don't want this to be the norm. Like, this is problematic if provinces are doing it.
Yeah.
Now the federal government does it. Is this going to be the new normal where people just call, snap elections? We do have a model of a no confidence vote.
Yeah.
We're not the Americans that have this static kind of.
And we have a date set too.
Yeah. We do have that. Yes, I mean, we could follow that model. But to be honest, it's okay if there are scandals, as there are here. If there's legitimate reason to call an election early, absolutely.
Yeah.
But not because this is the time to get a majority.
Yes.
That, again, look at what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
There are people around the world who need Canada right now. There are Canadians who need the government right now.
Yeah.
And for MPs now just campaigning and not really being there to truly put into plan, actual policy, even if it's just 36 days, and I mean usually it's a little bit longer than that, is a problem.
Yeah. And this election is going to cost the taxpayers twice as much than a regular election cost. The reason being, we are still in pandemic, and they have to make all the protection for the people that will be working at the campaigns, or maybe at the day of the election, or people that's going to be voting on that day. So do we have that much money just to throw the money like that when it's not called for? And the deficit of this country is about $423 billion.
Yeah.
When he got into the power, it was $32 billion. I understand he gave money out to everybody. The country needed the money. It's 400. Has he ever thought of how we're going to pay this back, or who is responsible for paying it back? We need to bring it down.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where small decisions matter, right? So absolutely, there was a need to spend that money. I think realistically, Canadians are not well off. We saw that working class people can barely survive 2 months, in terms of if they lose their job, or, and that was the reality for many Canadians. That's another issue to talk about. Are we economically sound to begin with, right? So the programs that were started, I think, were good. I think most Canadians survived because of it. I also think the amazing job, because we want people to vote. And so Elections Canada and all the folks that do this work, amazing. And so if the money is needed to be spent, it should be spent. But at the same time, again, with an early election call, for double the cost, why? And that is a hugely problematic, right? That's not fiscally responsible. There was a cheaper way to do it, and it just meant waiting a little bit longer, right? I don't know, maybe we could have still done it within this year. I'm not, I'm not sure about that, but certainly not September 20th, right? And that's where I think a lot of people are doubting. Is the money being spent correctly? We're buying pipelines rather than thinking about improving healthcare, pharmacare, right? We have veterans that are speaking out about saving Afghan lives, saving sick individuals that are in Afghanistan, right? Like, women's rights, all kinds of things. That's not happening. Even though I'm sure the full election amount might not be a lot of money in terms of the full budget, right now, I think there are better ways to use that money. And then just take a breather and then come back around to a proper election and then whatever it costs, it'll cost, but do it in a way that hopefully is not a detriment to more important issues that are happening right now, like right this second, and that injection of $1 million, a couple million, here and there, might be the difference between life and death for people.
Well, let's put the money where your mouth is. Look at BC burning down. Look at the environment. Should we not be spending this kind of money onto that so that our children, everybody can live safely and breathe safely? I think the government is so irresponsible. And this is not just going to be this summer only. It's just like this pandemic. There is one pandemic with the virus, and the second pandemic we are facing is the environment.
We're seeing the domino effect, right? This is climate change in action. It's not going to get better. And the more we wait to actually put in place like strong environmental policies, and I mean things that would transform our economy, would give us huge boost if we really went green. Also, decolonization is important here. The way in which we use the land, the way in which we protect our resources. When you strip the land of trees, of natural resources, this is why the fires are getting worse. We already live in an environment here in BC where fires are natural occurring.
Yes.
So that's fine. We know it happens. We choose to live here. But it's getting worse and worse, and we're seeing things that should not be happening in the scale or time frame that it is. And that is absolutely connected to our environmental policies.
Yes.
And you're right. So where is the long-term vision that protects lives? Because right now we're literally throwing money into fire because we have to.
Yes.
Obviously, we have to save lives. We have to save communities. We are throwing money into fire when we know that should the federal government, international companies, all folks are involved here, that if they had a better plan, then over time we wouldn't need to have this calamity on us every single summer. Right? We have people who are losing their livelihoods. We have people who are losing their homes, their lives, because of fire. And it's just, it's I don't know. I don't see a sense of shame. I don't see a sense of responsibility that we need to have in order to actually make the changes we need to say this is not just natural occurring. Oh, the fire season. This has absolutely everything to do with climate injustice and trying to get, we always complain about, carbon and which country does what. Well, Canada is a major user of carbon, right? We are a hugely problematic country when it comes to that. So all of that's connected. I want people to understand that. Don't roll your eyes when people talk about the environment. It has everything to do with so much other policy. And don't wait until your house is burning down and you're begging the government for help to suddenly care about these issues.
Yeah, about the climate change. And with the First Nations as well. There have been so many unmarked graves with all the children. People are grieving the First Nation community, and here we're throwing the money and not be able. Even some of the reserves they still have, there is no cleaning water, which is a given, right? We talk about third world countries. We send money out there. Go ahead and do that. They need. But when we look at our own people, the first people of this land, they do not have access to clean drinking water. And the children were taken away, stolen, and being killed. And now they are finding out these unmarked graves. Should we not be doing more to First Nations than...
I mean, you talk about crimes against humanity.
Yes.
You talk about genocide. That this is what's happening. And, in terms of the water situation... Again, very clearly, 2019, we'll solve it, we'll deal with it, right? And I don't just mean on the Liberals, but it seemed like overall, we don't care that much. We keep saying we do, but it's not that hard because if a water pipe burst in my community, right? I mean, I live in Surrey, right? In Surrey, they would take care of it.
Right away.
Right away. So first of all, as settlers, as people who have that privilege, we need to realize that. Like, this is not an issue of like, oh, it's so hard to do. It's not hard to do. I think it's 51 reserves that are left that don't have clean water. That is a shame. That is an actual shame. And absolutely that's connected to what we're seeing with the finding of the thousands upon thousands of unmarked graves of children. I want people, I think one of the most important things you could ask any politician is don't let them just tell you about reconciliation. Because a lot of First Nations people don't believe in it anymore. Because they see the problem that it has to take dead bodies of children for them to say anything. So this is problematic. I don't want, I'm a teacher. I don't want students to die in a school before the government goes, oh yeah, that might have been problematic. So we know that this problem is ongoing. I want people to ask about truth and justice and what that actually means. How are you going to truly change the relationship with Indigenous peoples? And that's going to be a question that to be honest, that's what I want to hear. That's the depth of that answer. Because up till now, there's been very little done, and you see how this government, the Liberal government, had taken First Nations to court, St. Anne's and more, millions of dollars. Again, talking about fiscal responsibility.
Still, their children are taken away and putting it the.
Oh, absolutely. So
even knowing all these things that
don't let them just talk about clean water radar to find more graves. Like. The genocide is ongoing. And when we talk about the removal of children from homes, when we talk about over-criminalization, right, there's so many different realities that First Nations people are facing where they don't have equal rights. There's a lot of stereotypes about, oh, they get this, they don't. And in fact, what they have to go through, and I mean, they're doing incredible. That resilience, that strength, the leadership that we are seeing is incredible, and it's always been there.
Yeah.
And to survive genocide is incredible. But I do think it's a major issue of this election. I'm sure other things will come up.
Yeah.
But the least we can do, we are all mourning for those children. I know it has been, I guess, beautiful
and it has
to
been
see.
shifted
Yeah.
from the First Nations kids to this election now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
The focus is.
You know what? Great point, right? Great point. We're still trying to figure out how to actually deal with these mass graves.
Yeah.
We have a Catholic Church that still refuses to release documents, to take responsibility. Gosh, I wish the Canadian government spent more time on that to really push forward with their might as a nation to say, we're not going to stand for that, instead of worrying about how much money you're fundraising and how many votes you're going to get. You want to earn our vote for any party? Do the work.
Yeah.
An election every 2 years is not work.
No.
That's just you trying to get the job. You haven't worked long enough, and certainly the results haven't been there for us to really even be able to assess you properly.
Right.
So absolutely. So even the election call is problematic in the sense of settler colonial Canada again saying, no, we're going to do our thing first.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back to you.
And all these promises that were made in 2019, none of them gone through. You know, another thing is that, and here, what are you promising now?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, before we go,
Absolutely.
so we know the election date is set, is September 20th.
Yeah.
What would you like to say? Go out, exercise your right to vote.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Most importantly, right? Get out there and vote. I think, again, it's hugely problematic that we elect people with no mandate. So, because even if you do the math around it, you have majority governments, minority governments based on like 25%, you know?
Yeah.
That is not a majority.
Yeah.
That means they represent the minority.
Yeah.
And we know who those people are. They tend to be the well-off. They tend to be those that are not like us, are not the working class, who aren't struggling, right? That is hugely problematic. So absolutely go vote. I would say if COVID has been a good thing in any way, is that the mail-in ballots, the early voting has been amazing.
Yeah.
So there is no reason. Now, of course, you should get time off work to go vote.
Yeah.
I think that's
4 hours
foundationally important. But at the same time, there are mail-in ballots, and again, great job by Elections Canada, Elections BC, all of these, that they're not political, right? They're completely neutral, and they do an amazing job. But also, I want you to question those who are running. Don't let them sell you these, one-liners. Oh yeah, we believe in reconciliation, or oh, the forest fires are terrible, or we believe in climate change. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. And you're right. So many promises have not been kept or been broken. I did want to mention one more, and that is we still have a blood ban against gay men or men who sleep with men.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be dealt with years ago. So we have ongoing human rights issues that need to be questioned and need to be dealt with. So please have your voice heard. Your MPs will be asking for your support.
Yeah.
Don't give it, your candidates will be asking for your support. Don't give it unless you get the answers you truly desire. But please realize that all this idea of one party having all the answers is completely false.
Yeah.
So vote for the policies you truly want to see. And remember that at the end of the day, let's get them working together and force them to do that. The more we don't care about this election, the more we don't vote, the more we don't take time, the more they're going to think, okay, we've got them, and we can do whatever we want. So let's
a free run for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's, I think, part of the hubris, this idea that we can just call an election whenever, and Canadians aren't going to complain.
Yes.
Thank you, Annie, for your insight into politics. Here are some events that you may be interested in. Understanding teenage brain development and behavior is taking place online and is innovative and packed with useful information that will help you understand the changes that happen in adolescence. Saturday, September 11th from 12 to 5 p.m., it is Recovery BC in New Westminster. This celebration of many pathways to recovery and addiction while raising our voices and saying we can recover. This is Canada's largest mental health and addiction recovery event. Join them on their annual street festival. September 7th is the first day back to school. Masks are mandatory from grades 4 to 12, so if you are shopping for your children for school supplies, please be mindful of getting them a mask as well. Fiji Disaster Relief Society, in partnered with Fiji in Focus, celebrating Fiji's 51 Independence Day on October 9th at 6:30 at Kana Banquet Hall. Tickets are only $30 each. For more information, please contact Kevin Chand at 604-562-4569 or Camilla Singh at 604-537-5123 or Andy Chand at 825-8261. Parkinson's Super Walk is Canada's largest fundraising event for Parkinson's disease, raising vital funds for support, advocacy, and research. In BC, over other 20 cities will be joining on the Super Walk. This is taking place on September 11th. As a team, for more information, contact 604-662-3240 or 1-800-668-3330. If you have any events and would like to promote it on our show, please contact us at asianpulse@gmail.com. We have run out of time, and I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did bringing it to you. If you would like to be a supporter or to be a sponsor, contact at 604-537-5123 or email us at asianpulse@gmail.com. Before I leave you with these thoughts. Whether we are concerned with suffering born of poverty, denial of freedom, with armed conflict, or reckless attitude towards the natural environment everywhere, we should not view these events in isolation. Eventually, their repercussions are felt by all of us. There need effective international action to address these global issues from the perspective of humanity and from a profound understanding of the deeply interconnected nature of today's world by the Dalai Lama. If you missed our show today, you can catch it again on Thursdays at 8:30 and again Saturdays at 5:30 on Channel 4 and Channel 10 in Calgary. I'm your host, Shivagni Naiker, signing off.